and she began to loosen up a bit. She admitted to being a bit nervous around Harry due to more than her lack of teaching experience. Although she knew Harry was on the outs with his family, he was still the eldest son of James Potter, who was a senior Auror and would likely be supervising her at some point. She had been a little leery of getting caught up in the Potter family drama, but she also wanted income of her own as she was a Hogwarts graduate and felt uncomfortable still relying on her parents for spending money. Harry assured her that all of his tutoring was kept confidential and that James Potter would never find out from him that she was his tutor. By dessert, she'd even admitted 2 personal secrets to him. First, she was a metamorph magus with the power to change her own appearance at will, a talent she'd manifested since early childhood. She even showed off for Harry by briefly turning her hair bubblegum pink. That was what clinched her position at the Auror Academy. She'd wanted to be an Auror anyway, but there was an unofficial government policy that all but required known metamorph magi to work for the government in some capacity. The other secret was that she and Harry were distant relatives. Her mother was a private healer named Andromeda Tonks. Nay. Black and Harry's late grandmother Doria Black was Andromeda's great-aunt. She admitted when asked that she was a cousin to Sirius Black, but claimed that she never knew him as she'd only been a small child when he went to prison. She indicated that her mother had been on the outs with the Black family due to marrying a Muggle-born, and she didn't think Andromeda had seen Sirius in years at the time of his arrest. After lunch, the two finally got down to combat magic, which was what Harry most wanted to learn. She gave him the usual lectures about how he shouldn't be dueling in the Hogwarts corridors, and he reassured her that he merely had a strong interest in dueling competitively, and the Dada teachers at Hogwarts were traditionally of poor quality, to which she could only agree. He did not mention that the last one had been an agent for a still-living Voldemort. And so the two spent the next 3 hours covering a variety of 2nd and 3rd year combat charms and hexes. Expelliarmus, Defindo, and Immobilis were obviously useful, but Harry was intrigued by the possibilities of Depulso and Opugno. The former was the knockback Jinx, which could fling the target back a good 10 to 20 feet with considerable force. The Opugno hex was combined with targeting words and would cause the target to attack an enemy of the wizard's choice. For example, Avi's could be used to summon a flock of birds, but Avi's Opugno would cause those birds to swarm against an enemy. But best of all, Tonks taught Harry how to perform Serpent Sorcia, the snake-summoning charm.
I figured as a Slytherin, this might be a useful charm to know,
she said with a wink.
Indeed.
Harry said mildly, while itching to see how the conjured snake reacted to Parseltongue. As with Avi's, combining Serpent Sorcia with Opugno would cause the conjured serpent to attack Harry's enemy without further direction from him, but he suspected that any snakes conjured could do a lot more than that. Their lesson ended at 4, at which point Tonks cast the notification spell that informed the Ministry that Harry was once more forbidden to use magic. She also took back the portkey, as Harry was not old enough to possess it without Ministry approval, which Hestia was currently trying to get. Then, Tonks headed home, while Harry spent some time exploring Diagon Alley. He made a brief foray into Flourish and Bots and ordered some books on dueling and defense training that would be delivered the following week. He also took in an early supper at the Leaky Cauldron before heading home on the night bus, which dropped him off at a petrol station about 3 blocks from the Dursley residence. Harry was quite pleased with how the day had gone and was looking forward to an hour or so of television, followed by an early bedtime. Naturally, that was when things went pear-shaped. Just as Harry was about to turn off the sidewalk and into the Dursleys' driveway, there was a sudden flash of light accompanied by a loud pop, and the boy was knocked flat on his back. He blinked his eyes for a few seconds and was surprised to realize that there was now a small creature sitting on his stomach, a pitiful goggle-eyed thing with long droopy ears and a filthy tea towel worn as a tunic. Harry recognized the creature as a house elf from the descriptions Blaise and Theo had made of their own family servants. Immediately, the elf began to shriek at him.
The Potter child must not return to Hogwarts. What?
Exclaimed Harry in confusion. What is this? Who are you?
Never mind who I is. The Potter child must not return to Hogwarts. Great evil is coming there, wants to kill Potter child. Kill her.
Harry suddenly looked around in confusion.
We're on a public street. You can't be seen here. It violates the statute of secrecy. And anyway, what is this evil and who wants to kill me? If it's Voldemort, I already know about him and I plan to kill him right back if I get the chance. Udoro.
Wailed the elf piteously.
The Potter child must not say that name.
Stop shouting, yelled Harry. The elf's mouth snapped shut, and he grabbed his ears and pulled them down into a makeshift gag.
Look,
Said Harry, who sat up as the elf jumped down to the sidewalk.
let's start over. What's your name?
As he spoke, the boy looked around but saw no signs that any muggles had noticed his confrontation with the elf.
Udoro.
Wailed the elf more quietly.
Dobby cannot tell the Potter child his name. If it got back to Dobby's masters that Dobby had warned the Potter child of danger, Dobby's head would be mounted on the wall of shame.
Harry considered that mental image for a second.
Well then, I guess it's a good thing I don't know Dobby's name.
He said dryly.
Look, can you at least tell me more about this evil that wants to kill me? No, Dobby can give no details. Dobby will already have to iron his ears for doing this much. Besides, why would Potter child want to go back to cold, drafty castle where his friends don't even write him letters?
Harry focused past the gruesome vision of the poor elf ironing its own ears as a self-inflicted punishment to the second part of that outburst. You're the reason that my owl posts haven't been getting here, he accused. With that, Dobby began to hop up and down in agitation before finally reaching into his tunic and pulling out a stack of letters wrapped up in twine.
Dobby thought if Potter child thought Potter child's friends didn't care enough to write, he might not go back to Hogwarts. But Potter child talked to his girl-child friend with Mugglesy speaking good, so that did not work.
Dobby looked at Harry with what he no doubt thought was a cunning expression.
If Dobby gives Potter child his letters, will he promise not to go back to Hogwarts? No, I will do no such thing, and stop calling me Potter child. I'm nearly 12, call me Harry. Dobby knows this Potter child is called Harry, but Dobby does not know which Potter child is in danger and so must protect both.
Harry closed his eyes and rubbed his temples for a few seconds.
You know that there is some evil coming to Hogwarts that will try to kill one of the Potter children, but you don't even know which one. You do know that my brother Jim is the boy who lived, right? People have been trying to kill him since he was a baby. I'm sure he's the one you should be bothering now instead of me.
Dobby shrugged earnestly. Better safe than sorry, Harry sighed.
Dobby, listen carefully. I have to go to Hogwarts. If I don't, I can't get educated and become a wizard. If I don't become a wizard, my birth father will cheat me out of my inheritance, and if I'm lucky, I'll end up living in a cardboard box under an overpass. Better a cardboard box under overpass than a wooden box underground, Harry Potter.
Harry's eyes narrowed.
Not to me, Dobby. I'll die before I let James Potter beat me.
Ooh, Dobby moaned once more. Then the house elf suddenly froze, the way a small woodland creature animal might freeze upon detecting a nearby predator. Slowly, Dobby turned his head to the right to stare off into the distance.
Harry Potter must go into his mean family's house. Right now.
Dobby suddenly hissed.
What is it?
Harry asked, suddenly concerned.
Dobby must go. Dobby cannot be found here. Run home, Harry Potter. Run for your life.
With that, the strange house elf popped away, leaving behind the bound letters. Quickly, Harry scrambled to his feet and looked around, but he saw nothing out of the ordinary. He picked up his letters and then carefully made his way onto the grounds of 4 Privet Drive. Just then, he heard an unfamiliar noise from behind him. He looked back and realized it was a faint buzzing, but one growing louder every second. Suddenly, in the dim twilight, he saw a cloud of small winged figures, each no larger than a man's hand, rise up over the house across the street and head in his direction, buzzing angrily as they drew nearer. Harry's heart skipped a beat. Doxies, small venomous fairy-like creatures. One-on-one, they were a minor pest. The dozens heading his way, that was enough to eat the boy alive. Knowing that he wouldn't have time to make it around the house to his stairway entrance, Harry ran to the front door as fast as he could, but it was already locked. He turned around and saw that the swarm was nearly upon him.
There had better be some sort of emergency exception to the underage magic prohibitions.
Harry thought as his wand popped out of its wrist holster. Alohomora, the door unlocked itself, and Harry dashed inside, slamming and locking the door behind him. Inside, the Dursleys were all sitting in front of the TV. The three looked at Harry with a mixture of surprise and disgust. Then, before Harry could explain, Petunia screamed and pointed at the window. Harry looked over and saw that there was a pile of doxies clawing at the glass. He moved over to check the window.
It's all right, the wards on the house are holding. They can't get inside.
Harry exhaled, relieved to feel safe. What are those? Shrieked Petunia.
Doxies, normally they're just pests, but someone decided to send a whole swarm of them after me. They're venomous meat-eaters, but they can't get inside.
You brought these things to our house.
Vernon said quietly.
I didn't bring them anywhere,
said Harry irritably, his attention still on the doxies clawing at the window.
Someone sent them after me and they followed me here. We need to send a message to the ministry. They have people who deal with this sort of.
You brought these things to our house.
Vernon said even more quietly. Harry froze. Vernon Dursley never did anything. Quietly, the boy turned towards his uncle just in time to see the big meaty fist a second before it smashed into his face. He dropped to the ground, dazed, his wand falling out of his grasp and rolling under the couch. Then Vernon picked Harry up by the front of his shirt and shook him violently. You brought these things to our house, he screamed in an absolute fury. Harry shook his head to clear it and glimpsed something in Vernon's eyes that had never been there before in any of his past rages. It was like some sort of fuse had blown in Dursley's mind. Vernon looked towards the window, which was still covered in doxies. Then, with a sick grin, he picked up Harry's limp body and carried him, past a hysterical Petunia and a terrified Dudley, to the back door. With a free hand, the Muggle jerked the door open. Then he hurled Harry out into the backyard as far as he could. Serpentine, he bellowed as loudly as he could before slamming the door shut and locking it. Harry scrambled to his feet and then staggered towards the door, nearly falling as he did. He pounded on the back door in terror, begging to be let in. Then he heard the buzzing and skittering of the doxy swarm as it rolled over the house towards his location. In the distance, he saw an owl heading his way, clutching a fish-looking letter of some kind in its talons. The poor creature tried unsuccessfully to change direction and escape before a quartet of doxies fell upon it and ripped it apart. The rest of the swarm had a bigger quarry, Harry. The boy pounded once more on the back door and begged for the Dursleys to let him inside. Through the window, he could see the Dursleys staring at him with what looked like quiet satisfaction. Then he screamed as the first set of tiny, vicious talons dug into his back of his neck. Vernon smiled.